help me in welcoming Greg to the stage.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Just absolutely delighted and honored to spend this time with you here today. I want to say something right off the bat, that there are wonderful options here as you scan the book, and if you find yourself in here after a few minutes and saying, like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, or he doesn't know what he's talking about, feel free to just go to one of the other sessions or whatever. I'll work it out with my therapist later, and it's all good. I want this to count. I want this to count for you, and we're talking about an important topic today. Just read recently that Gallup organization, in its latest research, has said that employee engagement is hovering somewhere around, positive employee engagement is hovering somewhere around 30% right now in the U.S. workforce. And if we can, as leaders, if we can move that needle a little bit, it'd be really good for us, right? Because the benefits of people being engaged in their work, that is, where they care about what they're doing, where they have a focus and so forth, as opposed to showing up and saying, like, I'm just here for the paycheck, or I'm just going to make it through till Friday, or I'm just biding my time until I retire. Whatever the case is, if we can move the needle, the benefits are vast, right? When people are engaged in their work, we know that things like collaboration goes up, creativity goes up, productivity goes up, absenteeism goes down, right? Retention goes up. Those are things that we should all be interested in. And so I've titled this today, as we talk about life-giving leadership. I think it speaks for itself, but I want to talk to you for the minutes that we have about what it means, about 5 ways that we can give our lives away to the people around us, in our work settings, in our families, wherever that is. Now, I won't take time to pull the room. We have a lot of folks in here from different settings. I'm going to rely on you to translate some of these principles into where you are. We're at different stages of life. Some of you have heard me talk about these things before, but I trust that even if something is repetitive for you, that perhaps you're in a different season of life right now, or maybe you're in a different setting right now, so this is going to apply to you in a different manner. Does it make sense? To give our lives away, it's the way to go. We are bombarded with messages day after day after day in our society, in our culture, saying that this life is all about you. Grab what you can. Make it about yourself. Live your best life. It's not true. That is not true. Those are empty endeavors. Chasing those things will find us empty, and the world in which we operate suffers. Jesus said that he came to give life abundantly. We think, how did he do that? He gave his life away, right? I came that you might have life, and he came to give his life away, and he calls us to come after him. At iPoint, we have a saying that the best life lived is the one that's given away. How do we know it's the best life lived? Because the best life that was ever lived gave his life away for us. And he bids us to come after him. Now, as we start thinking about that, what does that mean to give our lives away to people? I'm going to share with you 5 different ways that I think is very helpful for the people around us, all right, and beneficial to them, that they might engage more in our workspaces, that ministry might be richer, that the business place might be more lucrative, lively, whatever the case is, because people are engaged and cared for. That's where we're going, okay? Let me see if I can operate this. Here's number 1, okay? I'll just title this, to know your one thing. Why are you where you are? And I will suggest to you that it's important that you boil it down to one reason. We're so good at gathering, there are needs everywhere. And probably in this room, we are people that see a need and we just want to chase it and solve it. But it can be very easily to dilute our lives so much and we stray away from what our one thing ought to do. My mom used to say, if everybody in our church would just do one thing, Greg, She'd say that. And I know, now that I thought about that, like, she's right. What's your one thing where you are? And then how do you communicate that to the people around you? Okay? There's a proverb that says, without a vision, the people perish, right? Without a vision, the people perish. What is it that you are doing that your life is going to be about so that when you focus on that, it can be communicated and others around you can jump on board with that, okay? This is, I'm sure you're familiar with the padlock, right? How many of you had a combination padlock? A master lock, even at one time. I grew up in Fairmont, Minnesota, southern Minnesota, right on the Iowa border. When I went into the 6th grade, I got a letter from my school, Fairmont Middle School. And among other things, they gave me a list to consider the school supplies that I would need going into the 6th grade. Couldn't wait. I was told I had to purchase and bring to school 2 padlocks. I'd never had a padlock before. We didn't lock our bikes. So I got 2 padlocks. My dad took me to the Fair Mall in Fairmont, Minnesota. It was the largest shopping center between Albert Lea and Sioux Falls. It was marvelous. The anchor store there was Woolworth's. That's where we went to get the padlock. Most of you are going, it's pre-Walmart, all right? That's what it was. At Woolworth's, you could go get things like hardware. You could buy clothes, sort of. We bought our music at Woolworth's. We got that. You could buy pets. It was weird. But you could buy pets there too. And you could buy padlocks. I went with my dad. We bought 2 padlocks. I couldn't wait to get this thing operating. I went home, took it up to my bedroom. My dad came with me. I tore it open. These are the combinations. I still remember them. My wife says, that's weird. And she's probably right. But I remember I tore it open and I thought, okay, here we go. 28, 30, 20, and I pulled on the lock, nothing happened. I thought, that's strange. Tried it again. 28, 30, 20, nothing happened. I thought, they probably made a mistake on the packaging. I'll reverse the numbers. Tried it, nothing happened. Nothing happened. No matter what I tried, it didn't work. I threw it down on the bed and I said, we're going to have to get another one, Dad. And he said, okay, may I show you now? May I show you? You know this, right? There is a sequence. Like, what's the very first thing you have to do to open a lock? Very first. Yeah, you clear it, right? You spin it a few times. Which way? Right. To the right, right? You go around a couple of times, all right? Does the order matter? Yes. First number to the 28, all right? After the 28, which way do I go? Left. How far? What? Yeah, all the way around past it. When I get to the 30, then what? Right to the 20. Do I go past it this time? No. Guess what? It opened. The lock opened. My one thing was to get that lock open. I wanted that to happen. In order for it to happen, there were several things that had to happen in a certain manner, in a certain sequence, in the right order, right? That was my one thing. We use that illustration at iPoint. We have 3 things that are our numbers, our 28, 30, 20. The things that we want to happen, that we have to have happen when kids come to camp. Do you know what our first number is? If you're a parent, this is what you want the first number to be. What? Safety. Our very first number at iPoint is this, to keep campers alive and well. That sounds facetious. I don't mean it to be. We take that very, very seriously. Above everything else, we want kids to be cared for well, physically, spiritually, socially, emotionally, right? So that when they're there, they sense that, they feel that, and folks, if everything else fails, we can return the kid to their parents in the condition they've dropped them off in, right? And we want that. You know, I chuckle about that, but that's really the case. Our second thing that we want when kids come to camp, we want to give them the time of their lives. That's our second thing. We want them to have fun. Jim Rayburn, who founded Young Life, said it's a sin to bore a kid. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've never heard that. I've been at camp 35 years. I've never heard a kid at camp say, this is boring. It just doesn't happen. We do that for a reason. Because if a kid comes to camp and they're bored, they really don't care what the speaker tells them during the chapel service, right? If they come to camp and we're reckless, like we don't feed them enough food or we play a game where people get hurt and they're limping now at camp, they really don't care what their cabin leader teaches them in Bible study. They're thinking about their ankle. See, those two things have to happen first. Our third thing is this: we want to encourage spiritual growth. We want them to grow so that when those three things happen, guess what? The lock opens. The lock opens. That's our one thing. And our one thing at iPoint is this: we want every kid who comes to camp to be one step closer to Jesus than what they were when they came. Make sense? What's your one thing? What's your one thing in your workplace? Here's what the Apostle Paul said. Okay? I do not consider myself to have taken hold of it yet, but one thing I do, forgetting what's behind, okay, and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. That was his one thing. Paul had lots of other supporting things he did. That was his one thing. When our one thing, whether it's our business, our organization, when that's communicated, that transfers to the people around us and it gives them something to aim at. And it creates energy. John Kennedy, in the mid-'60s, when we were building a Saturn V rocket to go to the moon and come home again, he was touring the plant where they were being manufactured. There was a guy sweeping the floor there, and he said, "What are you doing over here?" And he said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." Right? That was their one thing. This is what we're doing. Oh, in order for that to happen, we have to make sure the floor is clean here. What's your one thing? Here's a way to think about that. This would be a great exercise to do with your teams and so forth. What do you want your teams then to build the 3 or 4 items underneath? What do you want them to know, do, experience, and become? This would be a great exercise. Think about it. If you're leading a team, think about this question, like, what do they need to know in order to do their job well? If you're a parent, what do my kids need to know before they leave the home? Okay? And we can fill them with facts and manuals and processes and so forth, right? The second thing is, what do we want our teams to do? What are the things that they're supposed to do every week or every day or this year? What are our goals for the year? Okay? The third one, what do we hope that they experience? Now we're getting a little deeper. It's not just knowing things. It's not just doing things. What do we want them to experience? Let's use a family if we can, all right, to start with. What do we want our kids to experience before they turn 18 and leave the home with us? Well, my wife and I, when we talked about this, we said we wanted them to experience forgiveness. We wanted our daughters to make mistakes while they were at home so they could know that we forgive them and we love them anyway. We wanted them to experience the joy of serving other people. We wanted them to experience that. For your teams, what do you want them to experience when they work with you? That. The fourth one, that they might become what? That's investing in your people. You want people around you engaged? We want to be clear on what they need to know, what we want them to do, the experience we want them to have so that they might become. That's pouring into people and moving people toward wholeness and a greater ability and so forth. And when those things are in place, then teams rise. Really, the become part, that's the part that's God's work, really, right? But we're tilling the soil by doing the other 3 things. And if we're thinking about those things, those can be your supporting numbers. I hope that makes sense to you. Tracking with that? Okay, that's enough on that then. Here's the second one, okay? Another key to life-giving leadership is this: to wear his coat well. The Christian life talks about this. For those who are in Christ, that is, Christ has saved them, they know that they're in a relationship with Christ, they've been clothed in his righteousness. That's the language that the Bible uses. They've been wrapped up and they wear his clothing, all right? As followers of Christ, though, we have an opportunity to determine, like, how will we wear that clothing? Okay? In Acts chapter 1, Jesus we're told he's going to ascend back to the Father, to the Father. And he says in verse 8, he says this. He said, he's talking to his disciples, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Notice what he says. You will be my witnesses. There's no choice in that. Just like today, if you leave and you're going to exit and you're going to go out onto 25th Street here, you're the next car, you're waiting your turn, somebody pulls out in front of you and they didn't see a car coming and there's an accident. You see it. You don't have a choice as to whether or not you're a witness. You do have a choice in this. What kind of story will you tell? How will you report that? Right? We have the same thing. Jesus says, if you are righteous because of me and you are mine, we have an obligation to tell a story. What kind of story are we going to tell? And then the second thing that has to pop into our mind is like, how are we going to pull this off? How are we going to do this? One key is this. So we think about wearing his coat well so that Jesus looks good where we are. One key is this, that we spend time with him. I grew up next to, in Fairmont, Minnesota, home of the Fair Mall. I grew up next to another kid. His name was Greg Connor. Okay? Greg Connor and I had a really good time together. But sometimes I would come home from Greg Connor's house. My mom would say, I think you've been spending a little too much time with Greg Connor. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? If that didn't land yet, let me tell you a story. In Fairmont, Minnesota, I was in 8th grade. Okay? 2 years passed. I was in 8th grade. My dad was a German teacher. Every year, in order to make extra money, my dad would take students to Germany on a 2-week trip. High school students. I was in 8th grade and I knew next year my dad was going to Germany. I thought I would very much like to go to Germany with him and with all my friends. I asked my dad, I said, Dad, I have something to ask you. He said, what is it, Greg? I said, can I go to Germany with you next year? My dad said, sure. And I thought, well, that was easy. Great. He said, you just have to pay for it. How much is it? $1,200. It's like $1,200. I was delivering the Fairmont Sentinel newspaper, netting $30 a month. I was going like that's not going to make it. So I thought, what is a legal way for an 8th grader to make that kind of money by next year? Well, I thought, I got some time this summer. And there were 3 ways that kids my age made money back then in southern Minnesota. They all revolved around agriculture. I grew up in an agricultural area, farming area, but I was not a farm kid. And you're going to learn about that in a second. The 3 options were this. You could hire yourself out to a farmer to pick rocks. You'd walk through a field, and the way I understood it, you pull rocks out of the dirt and put them on a wagon. Now, if you look at my build, you're going like, that's not a good option for you. You're right. That's not it. So I wasn't going to do that. I could walk beans, which is hoeing beans, or detassel corn. I thought, detasseling corn, that sounds like the easiest of those. I mean, and if you're not familiar, corn grows up and it forms tassels, right? There's a male and a female corn plant. Who knew? There are some plants that they wanted to keep away from other ones so they didn't pollinate. So they put you in rows of corn and said, before this happens, we need to pull that, sounds awful, pull that tassel out of the corn plant, all right? And so I figured out the way, it wasn't an hourly job, you got paid by the acre. So I took $1,200, they're paying $350 an acre, okay? And don't get ahead of me. They paid $350 an acre. I did the math. I thought 3.4 acres. I signed a contract to detassel 3.4 acres of corn, not knowing what an acre was. I didn't even know what that was, but I thought 3.4, who can't do 3.4 of anything? Like I can walk 3.4 miles, I can do 3.4 push-ups, I can do all kinds of things. I could detassel 3.4 acres of corn, all right? Little did I know that in an acre of corn, there were 25,000 plants to an acre back then. It's more now. That was 85,000 corn plants that I signed up to detassel. The very first day I got a call from the supervisor, said, show up at the field and you can come, our period is starting, you can come anytime, I'll meet you at the field or whatever. I had a baseball game the night before, so I thought, I'm going to sleep in. Dad, I need a ride to the cornfield at 11 a.m. By the time I got to the cornfield, by the way, this is what it looked like. Corn, like lots of it. And I got to the field, it was 85 degrees already. And she said, okay, you walk this half-mile field, you go in here, pull out every tassel. Every plant has a tassel. And you walk through and pull them out. I'm like, okay. And I went in, and it was like the corn had this happen to it before, and it was not happy. Because the leaves on the corn started fighting back. I was walking through the corn, it was doing this. Just slicing me, and it was painful, and I was sweating. It hurt so bad, and the mosquitoes, oh my goodness. I walked a half a mile. I think I was crying at the end. I can't remember. But and guess what happens when you get to the end? You know what you do? And you go back, and I think I had something like 18 rows I had to do or something like that. It was crazy. We walked out in the field, and you did this day after day after day. You looked a lot like that. And then some days it would rain, and so you're walking through. Your shoes are 2 feet wide, and it was miserable. Here's the point. After about 2 weeks, I would go home, and I was so exhausted from doing this and playing baseball and so forth. And one night, I laid my head down on my bed. I was so tired, and I put my head on my arm like this, and I was almost asleep when I noticed something. Here's what I noticed. I went, I smelled like corn. Here's what I found out. The more time I spend in the cornfield, the more I ended up smelling like corn. Friends, in wearing his coat well, the more time we spend with Jesus, the more we end up smelling like Jesus. The Bible calls it the aroma of Christ. That's how we end up wearing his coat well. We'll keep moving. Number 3, we can count on God's long arms. I don't know what kind of stresses, pressures you're under right now, but people who care often wake up in the middle of the night like that. Something wakes you up. And it can be a fear. I love when this conference talks about leading with faith, not with fear. But the fact is, there are things that are fearful. If I could share one thing with you today about that, I would say this, friends, you can count on God's long arms to accomplish the things that are of ultimate importance. You can count on God's long arms. That is, he's able to do the things that really ought to be done, that need to be done. There's a story in the book of Numbers chapter 11, where Moses is leading the Israelites in the desert, right? And they're doing the things that they're really good at, complaining and grumbling. And God's providing for them every day. He sends manna, which I'm told means, what is it? They're eating that. I immediately think of, like, my dog ate the same food every day, all the time. And how I wouldn't enjoy that much, so I get the complaining part. But what happens in this story is the people of Israel go to Moses, the leaders, and they go to Moses, and they say, we want you to do something for us. We want you to go to God and tell him, we want some meat to eat. We want some meat to eat. Moses says, I'm not doing that. I'm paraphrasing right now, right? Okay, I'm not doing that. And they said, yes, we want meat to eat. So Moses goes to the Lord, and he says, Lord, these people, they're grumbling, they want meat to eat. And it says the Lord's anger burned against the people. And he said, if it's meat they want, it's meat they'll get. He said, they'll get meat, not for 1 day, not for 2 days, not for 5 days, not for 10 days, not for 20. No, for 30 days, all they will eat is meat. And then God said, they'll have so much meat, it will be as if it is coming out of their nostrils. When I was a kid growing up, when we talked about there was so much of something, we used to say, like, there's so much, it was like it was coming out of our nose. Like, God said that first. in Numbers 11. If it's meat they want, they're going to have so much it's going to be like it's coming out of their nose. Well, Moses asked this question that makes sense, right? How is that going to happen? If we could harvest all of the fish in the sea, would that be enough to feed these people? Or if we were to slaughter all of the cattle that we have, is that enough to feed these people meat every day for a month? And God asks this question. Is the Lord's arm too short? That is, you think I can't do this? Well, they did. Oftentimes in the Bible, when we read the Bible and we read it deeply and broadly, we see that when there is a question like that asked, oftentimes it is answered somewhere else. In Jeremiah 32:17, it says this, sovereign Lord, you've made the heavens by your great glory and the power of your outstretched arm. Nothing is too difficult for you. Whatever you're facing, like when we face difficult things, whether it's with people, I know you don't have any people issues wherever you are, but people issues, funding, pressures, there's regulations and so forth, whatever it is, you understand that the Lord's hand is at work in everything. He works in all things to bring himself glory. And if there's something of circumstance, something of substance that has to happen, he's going to see that it happens. I want to speak that word of peace to you, regardless of what you're facing right now. Okay? At the same time, we need to recognize that sometimes things just don't turn out the way we think they should, right? And no matter how hard we try, it just doesn't work. And then it's best to just laugh and move on, honestly. I started out my career post-college teaching at Ben Franklin on the north side here, and I would go in with just these crack lesson plans. I just thought they were so good. And some days they were horrible. They didn't work at all. Okay, and it's best to just move on. One time, we raised two girls, and I'll date myself here, but for Christmas, my in-laws gave us a docking station where we could take an iPod and charge it and play music through it, and you had AM, FM radio. You could put a CD in it and all kinds of stuff. Well, we opened up our Christmas gifts, and at the end, our youngest daughter, Cara, said, "Dad, can you put together the docking station?" I'm like, "Yes, I can." And I'm Dad, that's what I do, And we pulled it out on the counter, and the girls were so excited. I plugged in the speakers and so forth, plugged it into the wall, and the clock, the digital clock comes on, 12, 12, 12, 12, blinking. I thought, okay, I'll take care of that. Here's a button that says clock. I pushed the clock button. As soon as I did that, the radio came on. The radio came on, and it got louder and louder and louder, and it got louder and louder and louder, and I hit the clock button, nothing happened. I turned the volume down, and it got softer, and then it went louder again, and I didn't know what to do, and finally I got frustrated, and I pulled the plug on the whole thing. And I stepped back, and I thought, that was weird. I plugged it back in, 12, 12, 12. Okay. I hit the clock button to set it, and I tried to be really fast and start running the arrows to set the clock right, but the radio came on again. It started getting louder and louder and louder and louder, and pretty soon it was filling the whole kitchen. Janet's telling me, do something, Greg, and I'm like, I'm trying, I'm getting all frustrated. Finally, I have to pull the plug again on the wall. I'm like, I don't know what to do. One last try. Plug it in, 12, 12, 12. I'm like, okay. I hit the clock button again. Same thing happened. Same thing happened. And I know because I told the first story today, you're going to see a pattern in my life, but I'm working on that as well. But I said, the stupid thing doesn't work. I pulled the plug. I said, we're going to have to turn it back. My two daughters, Elise and Cara, when I turned around, they were lying on the floor, convulsing in laughter because, you see, Elise had a remote control.